Our guest speaker today, Warrant Officer retired Tom Martineau. Tom joined the Canadian Forces in September 1977 as an armored soldier. After basic training, he was posted to Calgary, where he served with the armored unit, the Lord Strathcona's Horse, the Royal Canadians. He was deployed on 2 United Nations tours to Cyprus and in Bosnia-Herzegovina. In Bosnia, Tom was shot and seriously wounded by a sniper, which ultimately resulted in a medical release from the Canadian Armed Forces. Tom currently gives back through a peer support program as the Operational Stress Injury Social Support Program Regional Coordinator for Eastern Ontario. He's also a member of the Invictus Golf Team, who will compete this year in Toronto at the Invictus Games. Ladies and gentlemen, Warrant Officer retired Tom Martineau.
Good afternoon, folks. First of all, I want to thank all the sponsors today, TD, Ken, Gary, Colin, Eric, Rob, and Ray. I think that was a wonderful day today. Beacon Hall, your staff here, you got to learn how to photocopy them. It was an excellent day. Julia and your comms team, it was great. And I want to thank General Retired Hillier got up here. We're armored, and we're out of uniform now, so we can say things to each other. He come up here and he said he wasn't a hero. Well, I got to tell you something. For all the guys in the Armor Corps, when he decided to buy us, I think it was 142 tanks there, General, he's not a hero, he's God. Because you know the other vehicles we were in, I got shot in one. I was asked sponsored by Mike and selected by Jay to come up here and talk, and they asked me, and I felt really honored and humbled by doing it, especially going around here today. You could tell I'm not one of the younger veterans because Jay let the cat out of the bag that I joined in '77, so that doesn't make me 25. But it's great to see the younger veterans here today because that was my cause. After I had gotten shot, and these guys said, "Are you going to come and talk?" I said, "Yeah, I got to make it personal. I don't want notes." So this is what happened to Tom Martineau. I was in a position in a town called Iliash in Bosnia-Herzegovina in 1994, October 3rd, 1933 at night. It becomes, with a lot of the troops, our alive day. Your alive day is the day you didn't die. It's when you relive. So my alive day replaces my birthday. I was born once, then I was reborn. The second birth was a little bit more difficult for me, I'm sure, than it was for my mom went through when I was born the first time. And I was thinking about, you know, do you want to make it real with the people? And I do. I was in a position, that's a bit of a scary thing to have happen to you when you just need a couple seconds here. Gary, grab me that wine. As a matter of fact, get the bottle of wine out. No. I'm sure were you hearing everything before that happened? Okay, we good? So I was in this town called Iliash, and if I get upset and start crying, it's because the Chicago Blackhawks were knocked out of the first round this year, not because of what I'm talking about. But we're in this town, and we had to set up one of the first OPs in Serbian-held territory. So for people that are aware or not aware, don't know the detailed facts of what happened in Bosnia-Herzegovina, former Yugoslavia, the hatred in the war was the richest I've ever seen. So in my whole travels and tribulations in the military. We were put in this town because in the Breza Valley, the two warring factions were mortaring each other's schoolyards when the kids would come out to play. So we were put in between them to stop that. The evening I got shot, my troop was coming under a lot of attack. I was a troop warrant officer. I had to get permission to travel at night. You weren't allowed to travel at night over there because it was too dangerous, and we had to go through a little alley called Sniper Alley. We went out there, I replaced the troop that night, and about 20 minutes later I got shot. So when you think of soldiers and the love and the brotherhood they have for each other, we would, when you hear the story of jumping on a grenade for each other, we physically would do that for each other. You don't think about it, you don't do it. And all respect to Canada and the Queen and the flag, right there it's you and your brother until you get back to Canada. And then we'll worry about the country and the flag and that, because the immediacy of saving each other's life is your number one priority. That's how our leadership taught us and trained us, and that's what we carry on with, and I know that goes on today. So I got shot, and it was really funny. I put a lot of humor in my stuff, or I'll start crying earlier. So the warrant got shot. The leader of the troop got shot, and I remember I was laying in the vehicle after I got shot. Now I had a bullet, unfortunately, go through my, it was a great shot. It really was a good shot. He hit me at about 800 meters, and I was sideways, so I had a bullet rip through my left arm. It went into my chest, broke off a rib, went through my diaphragm. Left lung, heart, back through the heart, left lung, went down, split my left kidney in half, so my kidney looks like an 8 instead of a kidney shape. Went across through my spleen into my left shoulder and hit my thoracic 12 vertebrae, which is your last spine, your last rib. Crushed my spinal cord, and I had immediately a paraplegia. I lost myself. I thought I had fallen asleep and woke up, and I'm looking at the gunner going, because I'm dazed and I don't know what's going on, but he heard the bullet enter my body. So he's asking Warrant, what's wrong? And I'm thinking they're going, okay, this is going to leave a mark. And I think it's going to have an effect on my golf swing, because I can't feel my legs, right? And that's where, and I don't know, Gary, Dean, and Bernie, you can substantiate that or not, if it did have an effect on that was my team today. So you know something's wrong. So anyways, there's an immediate reaction to that. Another funny story is when you have an entrance wound, there has to be an exit wound. And that's the priority, believe it or not, when someone gets shot, is you got to get to the exit wound to stop the bleeding. Well, there wasn't one. The body was still inside my body. So as the Master Corporal Phil Friday and the rest of the troop, and it was funny, they're coming up onto the position. And you got to understand, everyone's panicking. The warrant got shot. They're running up. They got webbing on, boots untied, weapons, helmets, and khaki green boxer shorts. It looked like the Keystone Cops coming up to help out the warrant because of the immediacy of the situation. We get up there, we do the first aid, and they couldn't find the exit wound, so I said, well, make one, because that's what we were taught. You got to follow process, right? I got medevaced out of Bosnia Herzegovina, came back to Canada, and I was, at the time, NDMC in Ottawa was still up and running as a hospital. I had an 8.5 hour surgery that night, and these things happen to me 20 years ago, but it's still alive today. So, and why I'm upset is because they had to draw about 20 of the troops off the line to donate blood that night for me. You know, I was given a briefing. I was telling Gary about this today. I was given a briefing at RMC about, I think it was about 6 months ago. And I'm giving a briefing to the RMC staff. And there was an MWO, female MWO in the audience, and she was crying. And, you know, I'm thinking I'm triggering her or upsetting her. And she donated blood. So she was crying because she would donate blood to me. And of course, I didn't know that's why she was crying. So when I found out why she was crying, well then, like now, the whole room was crying. So when you see things like that, that goes back to that soldier's dedication. There wasn't any questions that night. We got to donate blood. One of our brothers or sisters got hurt, and it's just automatic. So you go on through life, and of course, later on, you got to go through some pretty serious stuff. So I went back to a real good town that I grew up in, where I knew the Musitanos and the DiCapretos and all that. I was from Hamilton, so I was the only one that didn't know how to speak Italian, but I knew the mob. So I'm back in Hamilton, and they all think because I was in the military that I could just call up somebody and get boxes of grenades and rocket launchers. And I said, I thought crime was done differently now. I thought you guys started wearing suits. Anyways, I'm recovering in Hamilton, and yeah, and the general touched on it. Back then, there wasn't a lot of services for our injured. Basically, I used to say when I did documentaries and stories back then, we went to Bosnia to fight a fire, and we didn't have first aid kits. I was getting operations that I couldn't pay for myself. The health services that wasn't working. We didn't have the support we had today, so it wasn't really groovy, is what I would say. Going back, joining 77, I could say groovy. And, Gila cops had to get involved to get a wheelchair ramp on my mom and dad's house because it wasn't my residence. So I don't know when I was supposed to go for the house hunting trip, but I was in the ICU. And it's hard to go for a house hunting trip then. But anyways, so things weren't good. I got really mad about this because all I could think in my mind is, I'm a warrant officer going through all these troubles and tribulations. What about the corporal and his wife with the new baby? They're screwed. So I got mad. So yes, if you remember the warrant officer, I won't say the exact words, you fill in the blanks with the asterisks and the stars, that went up to Art Eggleton during the scrum and called him a liar and an F and A, that would be me. I got, of course, it's funny, eh? All the security crowds around you, and then the cameras come on you and the security takes off, right? Thinking, okay, whatever. And then I was escorted out of Parliament, so that was my first and last time in Parliament. It was a great day. And I guess if you got snow in Toronto, you can get more work at Art Eggleton than what he did for the troops. But it wasn't there. It wasn't there. So, the Canadian Armed Forces, let's fast forward to the point where, okay, we're getting troops hurt, they're getting killed, they're getting shot. We got to get this sorted out. So they started up the IPSCs. Now, all these acronyms I give you, don't ask me what they stand for. I do know what they stand for, but in the military, once you get all the acronyms down pat, they change them. So, and it's a one-stop shop for the troops. We're advancing things. The troops are starting to get help. Unfortunately, I was very angry at the time because 2 years after I was shot, my mom was attending to my needs, and then I lost my mom at 57 to lung cancer. So she died. I wasn't even out of the wheelchair, and she had died in the house while I was there, still trying to go through my recovery. So the history to me is I was a very athletic guy. I was a biathlon champion of Canada in '81. I won 3 gold and a silver. I was talked to about maybe possibly going to the Winter Olympics, but now you can't walk and you're in a wheelchair. So it's a different world. A neat world sometimes, viewing the world sitting down in a wheelchair, especially when in the malls and people think you can hover in them and don't get out of your way, but you hit them in the ankle, they move. So it's all these different life experiences, and you got to understand, in the military, you're taught something, you get to practice it, you're assessed on it, you get practiced again, assessed again, and then you go for the real test. Well, this isn't just the military, this is life. When something like this happens to anybody in life, there's no practice. There's no testing. It's it, and you got to adjust. I had a hard time getting through that. It wasn't the physical injuries. Because I was in a wheelchair and I lost some organs and I had to take meds, and you got to get sutures and operations done, and your spinal cord's like your hard drive. If you scratch it, it's okay until you get to that file. A lot of my calcium was being dumped into my bladder, so I had to go for these operations all the time. So all that was okay because it was physical. The problem is people start suffering psychologically. That is invisible. That's what a lot of soldiers take their life from. They can't stand the pain anymore, and a lot of times, whether it be physical, spiritual, or psychological, they want to end their life. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't agree with suicide. You don't want anybody to take suicide, but after going through it a couple times myself, I get it. I understand why it happens when someone wants to end their pain. Again, of course we're here today with Soldier On with the military, but I'm a firm believer this is a mankind problem, but our forte is the military. So as I moved on, I started having some real difficulties. I became a heavy-duty drug user and alcoholic because I didn't know how to run away from my own mind. I couldn't unhook it and put it on a nightstand, have a sleep, wake up, put my head back on. So I started really suffering and thundering in. And the analogy I like to use is you fall so far until you hit bottom. When you hit bottom, you got a choice to make. Either exit stage left, or you have to climb back up that hole you just fell. And it's very, very difficult. The job I do today, I deal with it every day with my staff and me watching. And unfortunately, and I'll talk to you later, General, because we lost 2 more last week, and I know one of the guys you knew if you're not aware of it already. These guys are healthy and happy, and you think everything's fine, and then you're going to their funeral. So it's really, really sad. I'll tell you a funny story here. When I was doing my drug addictions and alcoholism, which I got to be honest with you, got me through a couple nights. It wasn't bad all the time doing all those drugs, but I had to go see this new psychiatrist who was John Bartolucci, and you know I'm in Hamilton, right? So I had to go see this because they were going to form me for 6 months because I wouldn't stop doing the drugs and the alcohol. So we had to deal with this issue. So my psychologist, Jacques Gauss, who was a really great guy, fought in the Angola War for 9 years, so I couldn't bullshit him about what I did for a living in the military. He sent me off to this psychiatrist, so I went to his house and I knocked on the door, and a very beautiful woman answered the door, about a mid-40s, and said, yeah, the doctor's here ready to see you. So I went downstairs and I went into his office and I said, how you doing, Bartolucci? You know, my name's Tom Martineau. Jacques Gauss sent me, yeah, okay, Tom. And he says, and I'm looking at him, and he's about 75 years old, and I says, your daughter's beautiful, just absolutely gorgeous. And he says, no, that's my wife. And I'm like, okay. We're in Italy, we're in Hamilton. So I sat down, I said, you know, I'm thinking in my mind, do you want to talk to me or do I want to talk to you? So we start talking about the drugs and alcohol, and I'll never remember what he says, because you got to reassure the patient, right? So he says, what are you doing for drugs? And I says, well, I run out of money, so I'm not doing coke anymore. I'm doing a lot of crack, though. It's a lot cheaper. And pot, hash, and anything I can get my hands on. He says, okay. He says, what are you doing for alcohol? I says, well, like I said, I'm running out of money, so I'm buying some really cheap red wine, a couple of magnums a day. He says, what kind of wine are you drinking? I said, red. He says, is it Italian? I said, yeah. He says, don't worry about it. Okay, what? Okay, well, did I miss something here, Doc? Could you write that on a piece of paper? So, anyways, you know, so, you know, again, it's the reassurance, right? So I had to recover. It took me about 7 years to wheelchair and hand canes, arm canes, the crutches to out. And I wanted to play sports again. And I remember, I was talking to Jay last night about this. I remember going to the very first meeting when they were starting up the Soldier On program. And Dr. Lee was there. He's the chief physio fitness guy with the Canadian Armed Forces. And I'm listening to him and I'm thinking, yeah, this is good, this is good. And it started. Well, what I do now with the Operational Stress Injury Program is I deal with military members, veterans, and their families that are dealing with psychological injuries in a non-clinical aspect. And I knew one of the stakeholders in this would be Soldier On. And as they come up with their, through recreation, rehabilitation, and sport, this would be a huge benefit to veterans. And I'll tell you how this works. I could tell you personally from myself, but I'll tell you to thousands of veterans I've talked to that's come through our program, is when a soldier is medically released, everybody says they've made a commitment. They have. They've made an ultimate sacrifice on whatever they've done, unfortunately becoming injured. They've put their life on the line, whether they're killed or seriously injured. But the ones that are injured, a lot of them still has a sense of failure. Now, I know a lot of people in the room would not think that's right. I get that. But it's a sense of failure because they've let their brotherhood down. They're not there to the end with the brotherhood. So this failure, as they're being medically transitioned out of the military, can accumulate. It could be magnified. It could have ats and debts bolted onto it, but they're pursuing. So they could get out, not be ready for a job, try a job too early, not make that job. It's another failure. So you got to understand, a lot of these people as young soldiers or young Canadians want to join the military and fight, stand on guard for thee. We want to do this. So it's really hard to accept. Then you insert a Soldier On program. And understanding what the Soldier On program represents and does eliminates a lot of those failures. They are now back into sport. They are now being physical fitness. Their health is improving. And they now have turned some of these failures, or have taken the edge off some of them, into a positive. They're positive again, which leads on to any and other things that they want to do through their rehab or through their rehabilitation in life. It's not going to be the same for them. I was asked at a conference once, did you ever go to a conference and heard the person ask the 20-point question to prove to everybody else in the room how smart they are? This doctor did that to me. And he said to me, you know, Mr. Martineau, what changes and adjustments have you made in life since you've been injured, post-injury? So I grabbed the mic and I said, none. Because what has happened now is I didn't change a page in my book of life, and I know this with a lot of the injured soldiers, is you're given a new book. You're starting over again, especially with the psychological injury. You got to revamp it. I've had a wife come up to me one time and say, after a briefing, you know, Mr. Martineau, my husband is having a lot of problems with his post-traumatic stress disorder, but I see how happy and healthy you are. And I says, you know, I still have issues. We all have issues, especially, you know, it's more of like a maintenance as you age, as opposed to just taking a pill and making it go away. And she couldn't figure out where I was compared to her husband. And I asked her husband, you know, when was he diagnosed? And he was diagnosed 2 years ago. And I said, okay, so he was being suffered probably for a couple of years prior to his diagnosis. So your husband's 4 years old with this diagnosis. I said, how old is he? She says he's 45. And I says, well, he's not 45 years old with PTSD. He's 4. He's 4 years old with PTSD. I'm 20. And 20-year-olds know more than 4-year-olds. So it's to put it in perspective, because the family is a huge component in all of this. So tie it back into Soldier On. When they're offering this positive to the troops, and I've seen it firsthand, the feedback that I'm getting, it's improving quality of life within the family. All the family members and friends are getting the positive effect out of that. This is a rippling effect. You see the face of the soldier. What I can reassure you is, in the background, there's multiple people benefiting out of the work that is being done by Jay and his staff from Soldier On. It affects the whole family, children, cousins, nieces, nephews, grandparents. Everybody benefits out of this. So because of sponsors like TD Insurance, because of hosts like Beacon Hall, it's because of great Canadians donating and coming forward and supporting events like this, like all of you in the room, understand the rippling effect and the positivity through the caveat of the Soldier On program that it's happening on our ill and injured families who have made obviously some excellent sacrifices for our country. The best soldier in the world is a Canadian soldier. I've seen a lot of soldiers. I know the general can give you more details on that, but our heart, we wanted to do what we wanted to do. We're almost humbled when people say, you know, thank you for your service, and kind of beef it up too much, because believe it or not, what we did, we wanted to do just as what we wanted to do with each other as brothers and sisters in the military. So to get this extra recognition and support from everybody in this room and Canadians nationally, it's phenomenal. But please understand, if there's one thing you take away from here today, when that positivity happens at the soldier's face level, the rippling effect that it has in behind is endless. It really is endless, and it does save marriages, it does save families, it does improve quality of life. Like Jay said, it makes soldiers, injured soldiers and veterans feel like they're not alone anymore, and we all get that sense of feeling that there is life after injury and there is life after diagnosis. Thanks for listening to my story. It's one of many. It's not the best, it's not the worst, it's just a whole bunch of them out of a bucket. I wish you all the best. Please take care and stay healthy. Thanks, buddy. Thanks. Thank you.
All right, Tom, the story that you told up at the podium was compelling. I think that there was not a lot of dry eyes in that room after you relayed what happened to you in Bosnia. Why was it important for you to come here today and to tell that story?
You know, it's a belief in the support system that they have now for the Canadian Armed Forces, and in particular, Soldier On. I mean, like I was mentioning earlier, my story I told today was not Tom Martineau's story. I was the face of a story of all injured veterans and serving members. But it was my turn to talk. Any one of those ill and injured guys could have got up there, or girls could have got up there and said the same type of thing. And through Soldier On and, you know, these programs for, in their case, rehabilitation, sport, and, you know, recreation, it brings a sense of positivity back to a member who, I mean, we don't go to the recruiting station when we join saying we're going to do a 10, 15, 20-year career, get wounded, and then get medically released. We don't think it's going to happen. But when it does happen, it kind of throws people off their axis. And the brotherhood and the strength within the military is very, very deep, very, very deep. Only people that served in the military would know that and understand the richness of it. So when you see a program like Soldier On and people coming to events like this and putting into these types of charities, it's a phenomenal fallout as to the positive rippling effect it has, not only for the member but their family and friends.
Talk to us about the work that you're doing today, because I mean,
Sure.
although you're no longer in the active military, you're a civil servant for the military.
That's correct. In 2004, I moved from Hamilton to Kingston, and my son's mom and my son were in Kingston, so I wanted to be closer to him as he grew up. So I moved out to Kingston, and in 2002, there's a program that started, was called OSIS. Operational Stress Injury Social Support. And there was a guy by the name of Stefan Grenier. He was General Dallaire's public affairs officer in Rwanda.
Okay.
And when he came back, he started experiencing some issues.
I can imagine.
Right. So in between the medical chain of command and the military chain of command, he seen that there was something missing in the middle. So he pioneered the OSIS program. He went to a gentleman at the time was Adam H.R. Mill, which is today CMP, the HR representative of the military side of the house, General Couture, and made an offer to him about a pilot project he wanted to run. And the general said yes, sponsored it, financed it, you know, because it was a pilot project. And we started the OSIS program with 4 coordinators. So the program starts, and basically what it was is a non-medical peer support program to assist military members, veterans, and their families. Well, not so much the families in the beginning. Military veterans, members and their veterans that were going through psychological injuries. So when you say the non-medical, the idea here is to offer peer support, to convince them they're not alone, to help them out, to go see the doctor, to go get their comorbidity issues, if they had drug and alcohol issues and that, and get help to try to save their career, in some cases,
their
lives,
yeah.
Improve their quality of life, save their marriages, and that was the whole basis of the program. So it's growing and growing and growing, and then I came on board as I worked on their speaker bureau for a while, and I was doing English Canada, so I was going around the country delivering briefings on this new program. Eventually, of course, I became a volunteer for the program, which has very professional training to be a volunteer with OSIS. And what you had was, and I'll be honest with you, in the beginning, there was a lot of doubters because the mental health world can be very territorial.
Yeah.
And So people were thinking you're going to have all these crazy people hired to go take care of crazy people.
Yeah, so nobody's getting better.
Right.
What do you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So let's go get the popcorn and beer and watch this show. This should be good, right?
Okay.
Well, eventually, OSA started doing quite well. And then eventually we took on the family component. We had the volunteer component. And then we took on the, running peer support groups. So basically, what I do now is I'm a regional coordinator. I used to run the province of Ontario. Now I run half because the program's grown so much. So my AORs from, or area responsibility is like Sault Ste. Marie, Sudbury, North Bay, Petawawa, Ottawa, the NCR, Kingston, and Trenton.
It's a big
space. I run that part of the province. I've got staff working there. I have family coordinators, and those are hired bases on the being familiar with a loved one who suffered from operational stress injury. And our definition is not just PTSD or anxiety or depression. It's an operational stress injury is any psychological injury that causes someone's an impairment for someone's ability to do their job in the workplace. Mm-hmm. So it could be anxiety, depression, PTSD, comorbidity issues. So we put an umbrella term on it just to make sure that we're not specifying anybody individually. So that's the family coordinators. The PSCs are dealing with the military members and veterans. So as fire teams together, a PSC, FPSC, they take care of their local areas of responsibility.
How many soldiers are in that program?
Right now?
Yeah. Or how many, do you know how many have been helped since its initiation?
Yeah, a couple months ago we just went over 10,000.
Wow. How much has it helped you with all the things that you've been through by helping others?
Oh, you can't, it can't be measured. Like when someone comes up to you and says to you, if it wasn't for you, you saved my life. Like if anybody's ever had that said to them, it stops your world. Like thanks to you, I'm alive. Like wow. Like what better thing can anybody ever had said to you? And it's a tough job because a lot of times you give, and you may not get anything in return, but that you got to do that risk assessment prior to doing that type of work. And you have to give that empathy and understanding to what they're going through. And you can never, ever forget where you came from. Because once you start recovering and you're doing really well, you can't pretend you're there. You are there, but you got to remember where you came from because the others behind you aren't there. You've got to try to get them there. So you got to be careful because you don't want to be codependent with the individual, but you want to follow them on their journey and advise them and guide them. The analogy I like to use is someone's on an obstacle course and you're on the sideline, helping them out, screaming out help and support and assistance as they go through their obstacles. Now every once in a while you can throw them a bottle of water so they can have a drink, carry on with the obstacle course. But once you jump in there and start helping them, then you get a codependency, and they're not doing it for
themselves anymore.
That's right, and it's not beneficial to anybody. So if you keep that separation, follow them on their journey, support and make them understand that they're not alone, and cheering them on as they're going through their issues, people get there, and they get a lot of issues, right? So that's why, hence the knowledge within the community to assist, whether it's financial or drug addictions or alcohol addictions, whatever the case may be, you're helping them get together, improving their quality of life. The idea here is to save lives, save marriages, save relationships, have kids, have parents that are together, and but it's tough stuff because it's not easy to deal with, and not everybody deals with it the same way, right?
Well, we're glad that you're here helping people get through their issues, and just thank you for your work.
Yeah, I appreciate your kind words. It's a pleasure, and it's fun work. It's hard at times, but it's fun, and it helps you sleep at night.
When is golf more than just a game? When it's used as a conduit for ill and injured soldiers to get back to feeling like their old selves, and to find that sense of community sometimes needed to get through those dark times. If you want to learn more about the Soldier On program or the St. Andrew's Legacy program, please visit the website below. From all of us here at Rogers TV, thank you for watching. I'm Julia Batchelor.